Okay, colleagues, welcome back. Hello and Happy New Year. I really hope that we are live. Let me double check that the stream is working. I suppose, first and foremost, Happy New Year and congratulations to everyone on making it through 2020. All the jokes in order, obviously. Um, So, let me just double check that the sound is working fine. I suppose. Yeah, okay. Sound seems to be working all right. First of all, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to, virtually speaking, see everyone, and I am looking forward to beginning the second semester with all of you, and I hope we're going to have a productive time together, and I hope we're going to have a fun time together. So what I wanted to do today, to a large extent, is just clear my throat, get some things moving in my head, get some things off my chest. So this is not in any shape, matter, or form. This is not an official lecture. This is my chance to ramble about all the things that occupy my mind as the semester is drawing to a beginning, right? So I will definitely talk about modern political theory, which is going to be our course. I'm definitely going to talk about that, but sort of in a more loose fashion, I guess. Anyway, so without further ado, let me, first of all, yes. So looking at my slides, double checking if I forgot something. Yeah, this is going to be my New Year congratulations to all of you. So, akemashite omedetou gozaimasu to those of you who can share my passion for Japanese language. But still, and yes, definitely, to everyone, stay safe and good luck in the coming semester. See, PowerPoint has this weird property, like one flow of there's the flow in the slides, but there's also a flow of thoughts in my head, and these two usually tend to not align. In this sense, I very much prefer to teach in the classroom, and this kind of online social distancing really continues to take a toll, I'm afraid, on my capacity to teach, but I will try my best. I try my best, you will try your best, hopefully. So today I will not talk about a couple things. I will not talk about grades, and so second year students are hopefully tuning in, but also maybe first year students are tuning in, and first year students are wondering, what about the grades? So let me just get this out. I want to talk about substantial stuff. I want to talk about philosophy. I want to talk about the importance and the significance of political philosophy, right? So I want to get there. But first, let's get bureaucracy out of the way. So I will not talk about grades. I've spent a lot of time over this, these holidays, grading the papers, reading everything very carefully. So the grades are almost all done. But I'm teaching several subjects, and the deadlines of all the grades are approximately Monday for most of the subjects I'm teaching. So I'm getting all of the things in order. So hopefully on Monday everybody will get all the grades. This is not a promise; it's a tentative prediction. But don't worry, we're getting there. And secondly, I've seen that a lot of people wrote to me. First of all, thank you so very much. And some people have written to me, with Happy New Year, congratulations. Thank you, especially thank you for that. It's always nice to remind myself that I'm teaching people who are alive and who are hopefully interested in the subjects, and not just because when I'm walking around my own room talking to a microphone, sometimes it feels a bit disconnected. Hopefully, who knows? Maybe we'll be lucky. Maybe especially with the vaccines rolling out now, I have some glimmer of hope that maybe we will be back in classrooms at some point later in the semester, right? So maybe in spring, maybe in April, who knows? But I would very much love to see all of your beautiful faces. Anyway, so a lot of people wrote to me, and some people wrote to me with substantial questions, messages I need to reply to. I will try to do that as soon as possible. Right now, my priority is grading, and so not only grading, but I also need to fill out the sheets, the Excel sheets, calculate the final grades, so get everything together, right? So as soon as I'm done with that, I will try my best to answer everyone as quickly as possible. So if you wrote to me, thank you very much. If there's, if what you wrote to me about is really urgent and demands my attention, don't hesitate to write me again. Okay, I again apologize. Sometimes, my inbox gets overwhelmed. So if your issue is like extremely urgent, feel free to write to me again. Okay, don't hesitate to do that. Okay, so hopefully with that out of the way, let's talk about modern political theory, right? Which is going to be our course, Introduction to Modern Political Theory. And I want to take a chance to maybe take a step back from the course and from the syllabus and, maybe talk about the broader perspective as to why I think this course is important. So on the one hand, it's my official job, my official responsibility, and your official responsibility to take this course. But I think that there are good reasons to pay attention to this kind of course, right? A course like this, regardless of whether it is your responsibility or not. So, and I want to try to talk about that at least to some extent. Okay. So I have a rough plan. And I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go. And again, partly this is, I'm sure today's lecture is going to be slightly more haphazard, which is to be expected. But I need to, hopefully this will help me get my own thoughts in order, and help me make coming lectures slightly more coherent. Anyway, so. Yeah, so I talked about Happy New Year. That was point number 1 on my plan. So I suppose the next thing I want to talk about is this sort of political science and politics. Let me talk about this. So I teach many courses, but the 2 primary courses these days that I teach, the courses in which I give lectures, are political philosophy and philosophy of science. And there's an important overlap, which I see between the 2, especially in my own head. And sort of the more I think about this, the more it seems to me that it is appropriate, when we talk about political science or political philosophy. Again, for the purpose of this course, I'm not going to distinguish between the 2. Political science, political philosophy, same thing. That's on the one hand. And so when we talk about political science or political philosophy, it's important to understand that political science is a science, like any other science, right? It is a branch of human knowledge. It is an attempt of human beings through some form of collaborative, public, verifiable, hopefully cumulative enterprise to wrap our heads around important issues, important theoretical issues, but also important practical issues that face us in everyday lives, face us as individuals, but also face us as societies, but also face us as humanity. And I kind of want to touch upon, all 3 of these, hopefully today. And so I think it's important to understand that political philosophy, for my money, is just a branch of political science. So like a more fundamental, more foundational branch of political science, the branch of political science which deals with more fundamental questions or issues, right? So on the one hand, political science is a science, but on the other hand, science is political. So politics is a science on the one hand, but on the other hand, science is political. And when I say science is political, what I mean is that scientific knowledge is not neutral. Scientific enterprise in general has implications. Our understanding of how the natural world works, our understanding of physics, our understanding of chemistry and biology, and also psychology, not to mention sociology and now political science, right? Our understanding of all of these sciences has impact on the way we see our lives and we see our place in the universe as a whole, if you want, and our understanding of politics, right? So, and it's a long topic, and if you're curious about that, I tried to make a certain leeway into this question of relationship between politics and science. In the course which I have taught in the autumn semester, which is called Philosophy of the Natural and the Social Sciences, it's mostly available on YouTube, not completely, but enough to get you up to speed. So if you're curious about that, feel free to check it out. Again, this course in Philosophy of Science is more of a work in progress. I think I do have some preliminary conclusions, but at the end of the day, I think after somebody has taken a course like this, after somebody has taken my course, a student has taken my course, I feel that they would probably have more questions than answers in their head, which is to a large extent the way it should be. Partly because in general, this is what courses in philosophy are about. It's not about indoctrination, but about helping you think, not really about answering questions, more about helping you ask better questions. But another reason is that, in general, our understanding of the world, human understanding of the world, is limited. And this is kind of an important topic in all sorts of respects. So, human understanding is limited. And which means that questions are more important than answers. Because we don't have final answers, because all of our answers are tentative and provisional. Tentative or provisional. And I suppose one other thing I want to say is that, and I think I'm sure I'm planning to talk about this in a bit, but well, I don't know. Maybe let me talk about this now. So again, so if we talk about the relationship between politics and science in general, there's this very important idea or concept or conceptual framework in the intellectual history of humanity, I would say, significant, within the larger context of the intellectual history of humanity, which is called naturalism. And I would say, approximately the same thing as physicalism or mechanicism. Mechanicism. And we will see naturalistic ideas in some of the thinkers in our course. Actually, this is another question I kind of want to talk about. Choice of thinkers. So which I hope I am going to get to this today. Which thinkers we focus on in this course. And the first thinker we're going to begin with is Hobbes. And Hobbes is a so physicalism, mechanicism, materialism. And Hobbes, very famously, was a materialist. And basically, that's the story. And this is, I feel, that this is a very important part of the story. In many ways, I feel that this is the necessary starting point for any course in intellectual history that you take. Like, if I was teaching a course in philosophy of physics, maybe. You know how, like, in older times, there was less specialization in the academia, and professors used to teach everything. So, for example, I've been looking at Immanuel Kant's biography, and I looked at the range of subjects that he taught. It kind of feels to me that Kant taught everything. Like, feel free to double check that. But I mean, he was a mathematical physicist, right? But he also taught moral philosophy. This is not the world we live in today, for better or for worse. And I think I say for better or for worse. I feel that that's a certain problem. This kind of compartmentalization of science, right? So that science is divided into separate compartments which don't talk to each other, right? Very much. Compartmentalization, right? The idea that physics is over here, biology is over here, and moral philosophy, political philosophy is over there. I think that's not exactly right. I see institutional reasons for that, and maybe that's good in terms of doing basic research. I don't deny that, but on the other hand, I feel that there's a certain counterproductive element in that, and we need, at the end of the day, we need something like we need a class of universal intellectuals, people who know a little bit of everything and are able to tie the picture together. And very famously, and just random name comes to mind, Jean-Paul Sartre tried to be a universal intellectual like that. And in Sartre's lifetime, a younger generation of philosophers like Michel Foucault, I think, explicitly wrote against the idea of universal intellectual. And so in some ways, I am arguing against Foucault when I say that I think we need universal intellectuals. I feel that we, as humanity, we need universal intellectuals. People who are capable of bridging the interdisciplinary gaps and of talking across the disciplinary divides. Something like that. So should I add this to the slide, interdisciplinary dialogue? Maybe. And so, but anyway, one of the key ideas in the intellectual history of humanity, I want to say, is this notion that we got basically during the scientific revolution. So we get the scientific revolution. So starting with people like, especially Galileo, and then, well, you could say Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton. Kepler's over there as well, but I guess he's less famous. And actually, I want to kind of underline and underscore Galileo. And my physicist friends tell me that, philosophically speaking, Galileo is the most important. Again, from the standpoint of philosophy of physics, with this notion, of mathematization of physical science, Galileo, this notion of sort of the book of nature is written in math. The book, oops, maybe I should capitalize this. So the book of nature is written in mathematics. Or I should say in the language of mathematics. And by the way, so I going back to this idea, scientific revolution, so Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton, but then the continuation of this revolution, very importantly, is Charles Darwin. And what this is about is the replacement of the Aristotelian teleological framework with the new mathematical mechanistic worldview. So let me try to write this somehow. So so the new mechanistic mathematical framework. I should say mechanistic mathematical materialist framework versus the old Aristotelian teleological framework. And what I'm driving at, what I'm trying to say is that, for my money, this is the most, from my understanding of subjects which I teach, such as world intellectual history or intellectual history of Europe, or history of Western philosophy. From my understanding of teaching subjects like these, right, this transformation is the most important transformation in the history of humanity. And in many ways, Thomas Hobbes, who starts as a complete, uncompromising materialist, is going to be a very important thinker in our course. We're going to begin with Hobbes, and Hobbes is very much on board with this project. And you see, it's kind of an interesting idea. Let me digress for 5 seconds. Let me talk about Hobbes' materialism. So, Hobbes, okay, so when Hobbes invented his materialism, like back in the day, it sounded, or it looked premature. So Hobbes' materialism used to seem facile, premature, overly simplistic, premature, unfinished, not robust enough, incredible. It was hard to be a thoroughgoing materialist back in Hobbes' day. Incomplete, maybe is the right word. Incomplete. And basically, there was this notion that you needed something over and above the mechanistic universe. So something seemed to be lacking. Something seemed to be lacking. So something over and above the purely mechanistic worldview. Purely mechanistic. I shouldn't say worldview, purely mechanistic universe. Right? And specifically, what we're talking about would be things such as, well, I could say God, soul, immortality. Maybe talk about things such as universal standard of value. Sort of objective goodness, objective definition of goodness. And also, again, the Greek word telos means aim or purpose or goal. So teleology. This is coming from Aristotle, and Hobbes is very explicitly anti-Aristotelian. So teleology refers to Greek word telos, which means aim or purpose or goal. And the idea is that there are universal objective goals in nature. That nature is purposeful. Nature does nothing in vain. And you would even write nature with a capital N like this. So nature is purposeful. Nature does nothing in vain. And this means that certain things are objectively good or bad, but also human beings have an objective function. So humans, let's say justice is objective, maybe. Justice is objective. But, and I should say maybe natural and objective. Natural and objective. And humans have an objective function. Humans have an objective function. And human life has objective meaning. So objective function and meaning of life. Objective and maybe even external if you want. And so this was back in the day. When Hobbes was writing, he was actually writing uphill. He was struggling against this age-old tradition, Aristotelian tradition, which supposed that individual human beings, or just society, the world in general, and human beings within this world, the world in general has a hierarchical structure of purposes, that certain things are objectively good, right? So you could ask this question: what is the man's place in the cosmos? What is the purpose of human existence? Man's place in the cosmos, or human place in the cosmos, human place in the cosmos. Or if you want, this is the question of meaning of life, right? In a related fashion. And Hobbes, against Aristotle, wants to say, no, the world is simply matter in motion. There is no such thing as objective purposes in nature. Or again, Hobbes is a skeptic, so we should be careful. So as a skeptic, he's not trying to prove a negative. It's not like Hobbes can demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's no such thing as aim or purpose in nature. That's that's not what he does. But as a skeptic, he questions whether we have access to that. And his way of phrasing this is saying that God is incomprehensible. So Hobbes is going to say we can't know this objective purposes objective purposes in nature, objective purposes in nature. And his way of phrasing it is that God is incomprehensible. So immediately we run into this interesting question, was Hobbes an atheist, right? And it's a question which is difficult to answer, partly because, what do you mean by God? I teach philosophy, so every year students ask me, do I believe in God? And sort of the more I think about this, the more I am unsure how to answer this question. Because, to a large extent, to me, the question of whether you believe in God or not is a question like, what is your favorite dark matter candidate? Let me repeat that. What is your favorite dark matter candidate? Maybe I should even write this on the slide to make sure it's more comprehensible. So to me, the question, do you believe in God? Is a bit like the question, do you believe in dark matter, right? Or what is your favorite dark matter candidate? Now, the reason I draw, if you know anything about this is a big problem in cosmology, this question of dark matter. How deeply should I go into trying to explain this? When we observe the rotations of galaxies, but not only that, there's plenty of different observations, and also the observations of certain patterns in the cosmic microwave background. It seems that in order to explain what we see around us, we need to postulate the existence of dark matter. There's a whole bunch of technical arguments as to why we think dark matter exists, even though nobody has been able to detect it yet. And also, there's a whole host of different proposed candidates of what dark matter can be made of, right? And you can have all sorts of very different, interesting combinations. Like you can say that you should modify Einstein's equations, but also, in addition to modifying Einstein's equations, you also need to postulate one particular particle, or maybe several particles, or maybe a class of particles, or maybe some kind of weird, supersymmetric thing, or this year's Nobel Prize winning Roger Penrose, right? Sir Roger Penrose has his own interesting ideas about what dark matter is. So, okay, what I'm driving at, I'm sorry. So this is, I promise, this was not going to be a lecture. This is going to be, haphazard, me rambling about everything. So this is exactly what you get. I'm delivering on my promise. So what I'm driving at is that the question of what dark matter is, and how do we account for it? Or maybe you would say, no, there's no such thing as dark matter. This is just, we just need to modify Einstein's equations. That's also a valid possibility, right? What I'm driving at is it's a highly technical question. It is a highly technical question, which takes a lot of training and a lot of thought to even begin to answer. And I would imagine that most people in the street don't even understand the question. And even if you try to explain, the question to them, they would not have an intelligent opinion. Okay, I've spent quite, especially since, because I teach philosophy of science, I get into these issues. So I have some thoughts about, dark matter. And, cosmologists used to think that WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles, seem to be, sort of the best candidates for dark matter. But people also expected those weakly interacting massive particles to be found at the Large Hadron Collider, which was launched, several years ago. I think, probably some 5 or maybe 10. 20, yeah, time flies. About 10 years ago, right? But time has passed. We haven't found the weakly interacting massive particles. So now I feel that credences are shifting in favor of maybe axions, right? So it's a different dark matter candidate. So but honestly, if you ask me, I don't have the slightest idea. Okay, I used to think with cosmologists that WIMPs, weakly interactive massive particles, sounds good, but but now I've heard some stories. Okay, yeah, maybe it's going to be maybe it's going to be axions. Who knows, right? But it's a difficult question. It's not the kind of thing you ask a lay person in the street. But if you think about this for 5 seconds, the question about dark matter has to be a much simpler question than the question of God's existence. So the problem of dark matter is a limited problem within contemporary models of cosmology. And there's every reason to believe that the problem of dark matter will be solved. In 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, that we will solve this problem. In fact, people hoped that we would already have found dark matter in the Large Hadron Collider, right? And there are experiments right now. Like, it could be that tomorrow we will find the appropriate dark matter candidate particle, and the whole issue will be solved tomorrow, and the Nobel Prizes will roll out next year. That's a possibility, right? It's a complicated question, but this is a much simpler question than the question of God's existence. But for some reason, and I'm not pretending to, I'm saying this slightly facetiously. I understand that these questions are different, and our cultural attitudes to these two questions are very different. But I want to say that we have a cultural prejudice. We have the way our culture works. We have a prejudice that everybody should have some kind of an opinion about the existence of God. Like, you ask, you stop a person in the street, and they're either like maybe they believe in a particular religion, or maybe they're atheist or agnostic or something like that, right? So you expect a simple, straightforward, concrete answer. But I want to say that it is a prejudice of our culture. And there's a reason for this prejudice, but I want to say this prejudice is wrong. And the reasoning behind it is wrong. And for the same reason, basically for the same reason that you don't expect an intelligent answer about a dark matter candidate particle from a random person in the street, for the same reason you shouldn't expect an intelligent answer about the existence of God from anyone. Like, and if I personally, if I can decide what's the best dark matter candidate, for the same reason, I as a professor of philosophy, there's no reason I should be able to decide whether God exists or not. It's a complicated question, and there are different conceptions of God, right? And and I think in this sense, I kind of, as years go by, I more and more, to some extent, I feel slightly offended when people ask me this question, or especially when I get into theological discussions with first-year students. Offended is the wrong word. But there's a growing dissonance, between what I think and what I hear people saying, because I think in general people, tend to students' imagination, or human imagination in general, seems to be failing us, because there are so many radically different conceptions of God. If you think of God in ancient Hinduism, or in ancient Taoism, or if you think about notions of God, among the ancient Gnostics, people who read Plato religiously, right, the Neoplatonists, or if you think about various mystical sects of Christianity, Islam, or Judaism. Think about the Islamic Sufis, or think about something in the Jewish tradition. Think of Moses Maimonides or Philo of Alexandria. Or if you think in Islamic tradition of people like Ibn Rushd, sometimes known by his Latin name Averroes, right? So what I'm driving at is that you can see so many radically different conceptions, radically different definitions of the word God, that this question, whether you believe in God or not, sounds kind of meaningless, because before you can give any kind of meaningful answer, you need to be able to explain what you mean by God. Okay, this was a digression and rambling, and I kind of apologize, but again, I warned you that today's live stream, let's put it that way, is going to be a bit haphazard. But if I go back to Hobbes, Hobbes's line is that God is incomprehensible. So was Hobbes an atheist? Who knows? And I can tell you, practically speaking, Hobbes definitely was an atheist, in the sense that, in terms of from a practical standpoint, from the standpoint of his political philosophy, God plays no role in politics. Politics is a matter of human beings taking matters into their own hands, and Hobbes will not appeal to God to solve political problems, and Hobbes will not appeal to religious concepts or mysteries of religion or questions of afterlife or immortality of the soul when he talks about politics. These questions, from Hobbes' standpoint, are irrelevant, right? So politics or ethics, also ethics, I mean human life in general, Hobbes believes that we should understand that we are matter in motion, that human beings are essentially similar to a mechanical clock, and we should live this life. We should try to live this life as best we can, right? And what's going to happen to us after we die, we don't know. We don't know. So we should focus on the here and the now. Again, Hobbes, a skeptic, but also an empiricist, focus on the things that you can see and touch with your eyes, and you can know with certainty. And what happens to us after we die, we don't know. Some people talk about that, and Hobbes doesn't necessarily want to be blasphemous, but Hobbes reminds us that people can make mistakes, and people can lie, also very importantly. So there is no reason, there is no overarching reason to believe, for example, religious prophecy, right? And this has to be kept in mind, according to Hobbes. Okay, so, does this mean that Hobbes is an atheist? Well, anyway, so, but more importantly, I began by saying that in Hobbes' day, materialism used to seem overly simplistic, premature, maybe incomplete. But basically, I want to say that there are three things that have changed. And these three things are Darwin, DNA, and, well, maybe four things. Neuroscience, and the fourth one is going to be AI. And these four things, throughout the ages, have made Hobbes' materialism seem much more plausible. So what I'm driving at is that Hobbes, in many ways, was writing ahead of his time. Like, his conclusions did not seem as robust back in the day compared to what happens now. So first of all, so we have Darwin's dangerous idea. Dangerous idea. And this is the notion of purely mechanistic natural selection, purely mechanistic evolution of apparent complexity, or let's say apparent teleology, of complexity and apparent teleology, of complexity and apparent teleology. Wow, I can spell this time of day. So I write apparent because, of course, according to contemporary evolutionary standpoint, there is no teleology in nature. Of, again, complexity and apparent teleology through natural selection. So, biological organisms seem purposeful, but are actually just results of this. I'll say only seem purposeful, but actually are not. So, through natural selection, which is driven by random mutations. Driven by random mutations. If you don't write the word random, maybe I should write the word stochastic. Mutations. So and then we have the fleshing out. So this is the, again, purely mechanistic chemical basis of life. So the DNA molecule is just chemistry. It's just chemistry. It's just chemistry. And whenever I talk about this, I feel tempted to refer to food packaging. So food labels, or medicine, right? I shouldn't say medicine. I mean chemical. Pharmaceutical chemicals, chemical pharmaceuticals. However you want to put that. Okay, let's say nutrition and pharmaceutical labels. So notice, if you buy medical drugs, right? So pharmaceutical products, you trust the labels on the packaging, and you all have done this, right? Okay, basically what I'm driving at is that the food you eat impacts your body. The alcohol you drink impacts the way your brain works, right? The aspirin pill, right, affects the state of your soul, if you want. So we have experimental proof many times a day that life basically just is chemistry. When I say proof, that's too strong a word, but I want to say indication that life is nothing, as Hobbes says, life is nothing but the motion of limbs, right? Our definition of motion is slightly more sophisticated in the 21st century, but the basic idea is the same. So when we talk about neuroscience, so this was Darwin's dangerous idea, and neuroscience is what I think Francis Crick called the astonishing hypothesis. The astonishing hypothesis. The idea being that so all of our mental life is just the product of electrochemistry of the brain. So the richness of internal experience. Okay, let's say richness of mental and emotional life is simply is explicable in very simple terms of electrochemistry of the brain. Electrochemistry of the brain. And now we have AI. So let me write artificial intelligence. So obviously AI cannot right now do everything that the human mind can, but it seems that we are approaching a point where the distinction between human mind and artificial intelligence is really quantitative rather than qualitative. Quantitative rather than qualitative. Distinction appears to be, so distinction between humans and robots appears to be only quantitative, not qualitative. Not. So in the sense that with the modern advances in artificial intelligence, it seems only a matter of time before computers will be able to do, functionally speaking, to do whatever human brains can do. And sort of all of these, all of this complex of ideas, which begins with Darwin and it doesn't end, it's an ongoing project, all of this makes Hobbes's mechanistic worldview more and more relevant, more and more adequate, an adequate description of human life. And there's a whole bunch of things to talk about, and I don't want to talk about everything at the same time, but I want you to be aware of my biases, my own thinking. So what I have on the slide right now, this is my thinking, this is my interpretation. Now it's not random. This is me trying to understand the currents of the age. I think this is a fairly accurate representation of, broadly speaking, our contemporary intellectual paradigm. Not everybody is on board, but I think the ideas of naturalism form something like the backbone which allows humans in the intellectual sphere, scientists, to talk to one another. Biologists talk to psychologists, psychologists talk to political scientists, within the overarching framework of naturalism or materialism or physicalism. Again, there are people who disagree, obviously, but what I'm driving at is that it seems that there's something approaching a consensus, not universal, but approaching consensus. And I mean this both descriptively, that this is the way that things seem to be. This is what sort of people actually do think, right, descriptively. But also I think about these ideas normatively, that this is the right way to approach the problem. This is the way my own thinking works, and I think this is the way we should approach these kinds of issues, basically. Okay. And so I want you to be aware of my biases. So let me write this. Be aware of my biases. Beware. Beware. Let's say, okay, be aware of my biases. I am a naturalist, but you don't have to be. And feel free to disagree. Feel free to disagree. In fact, I keep mentioning this. This is an important part of our course, right? I want to impart a certain amount of understanding, hopefully, to you, right? So hopefully in this course you will learn from me. But especially excellent students who want to get the highest grades in the course definitely need to develop their own critical thinking skills. And I remind you that we have a wonderful system in which I, your lecturer, I will not be giving you your final grades, right? So we're going to have external grading, right, of our exams. You know, it's like too obvious to even mention. But what I'm driving at is that originality of thought is something which I think is going to be very important for us, especially in terms of the grades on the final exam. So I want you to learn from me, but I also want you to disagree with me. I also want you to be aware of alternatives. And in fact, there are so many texts, and I have a, we're going to read through this semester, but I have a certain way of looking at these texts. I have a certain, habitual, casual interpretations, the ways I have interpreted these texts in the past. And, my interpretations are not necessarily right. And I may be wrong, and, who knows? Again, I keep saying that hopefully you're going to be my colleagues, right? We're going to have hopefully less of a teacher-student relationship and more of a collegial relationship. You learning from me, but I also having a chance to learn from you. So this is, my own motivation, and I have changed my opinions in the past in response to criticism and suggestion dialogues with students, right? And, it's a wonderful part of being a teacher, and it's a wonderful part of seeing fresh, motivated, enthusiastic faces every year. But so again, I think there's a pragmatic. Well, I don't want to say pragmatic. I have my own interest in encouraging you to challenge my views. But also, in addition to that, pragmatically speaking, I think it's important for us, or I should say, for you, in terms of your exam, to be able to develop your own original lines of thought, right? And to see different interpretations, right? Because again, these wonderful texts that we're going to be looking at this year, they can be interpreted in various, very different ways. Okay. So, yeah. A whole bunch of things to talk about. Maybe, I feel that maybe I should be wrapping this up. Maybe break this introduction into several smaller chunks. But maybe to trying to bring this to a close, again, looking at my rough plan. So I tried to talk about this. Political science, science and politics. This is, again, huge issue. And I have this written here, that politics is complicated objectively, not for the want of trying, right? Going back to this notion that sort of, if we start from physics and we build up to political philosophy, understanding the human brain or understanding politics is, objectively speaking, a much harder, much more challenging task. Quantitatively speaking, right? I've been listening to a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Frank Wilczek, and he talks about how it's much easier for us to predict or to understand, right, the chemical composition of the early universe, right? So we know the chemical composition of the early universe, the entire observable universe, a zeptosecond after the Big Bang. It's much easier for us to understand that than to know what is at the center, what is the chemical composition of the core of the Earth, right? So you have this evolution of complexity. Physics, in many ways, is the simplest science, right? And early universe was very simple, but as the universe, in the wake of the Big Bang, right, as it cools down, elements begin to form, and matter begins to clump in stars, galaxies, systems of planets, etc. You get this growing complexity. So there is a certain objective mathematical measure, which, from the point of which, again, something like a human brain is objectively more complex as an object of study than a galaxy, from the perspective of, let's say, cosmologists, right? So a human brain, from the biological perspective, is more complex than a galaxy from a cosmological perspective. So we should not be surprised that we do not have a similarly robust understanding of human psychology or of human politics compared to our understanding of physics. In physics, we have made, in some sense, you could say, much more progress, but that's only because physics is a simple science compared to political philosophy. And we're still reading, again, the ancient books, right? People like Plato and Aristotle, even in 2020, in terms of political philosophy, not in terms of physics anymore, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. Anyway, it's a separate topic. I don't want to talk about everything at the same time. So one other thing I have here on my slide is, again, this idea that, in general, especially those of you who maybe will want to continue an academic career, if you go, to write your maybe master's degree, or get a master's degree, or maybe a PhD, I think that in general, your task will be more like analytical, more detached, more theoretic, right? In the sense that the way that modern academia works, political philosophy is construed as a detached discipline that tries to talk about the real world in descriptive rather than prescriptive terms. But the philosophers that we're going to read this semester, again, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Mill, Hegel, Marx, all of them care deeply about politics, and all of them have talk about direct implications. They will talk about normative prescriptions. These people, they want to give advice to society, right? They want to give, I want to say advice to individuals, to particular societies, but also advice to humanity. They give direct policy proposals, what we should change, what we should do. And again, if you pursue this as a career, there's less room for that kind of grandiose thinking. But I think it's important. That's the reason why we do political philosophy. We do political philosophy because we have important overriding questions. Political philosophy is important. That's why we do it. It's important for our lives, right? And I keep using this phrase: if you don't do political philosophy does you. We find ourselves thrown into this world without a manual, and understanding what we're doing here is an important intellectual task, and for every one of us, I feel, and hopefully a subject like this is going to help you wrap your hand around that. And political philosophy, again, helps inform your own individual life, find your place in society, or against society, who knows. Think about the radically conflictual ontologies, right? But also, political philosophy helps societies ask questions about themselves, right? Society thinking about itself. What is the purpose of society? But then, obviously, some political philosophers, I suppose Karl Marx is the first name that comes to mind most prominently. Karl Marx is going to talk about humanity as a whole, right? So, practical questions that deal with the fate of humanity. And you will have a chance to write about that on the University of London exam, which I find, which seems to me a wonderful opportunity for you to show your stuff. But throughout the year, and again, I'm probably going to keep repeating this over and over again, especially in the first classes, in our thinking about politics and in our working through the materials in the semester, I want you to get into this independent researcher mindset. I want to emphasize your individual autonomy, and also, as I mentioned, I want to encourage you to disagree with me, to take a different approach from mine, to find alternative interpretations. And again, I remind you that within the ethics of the University of London, it's crucially important that you not just repeat what you've heard, and but I guess more important, again, this ethics, which is very closely tied to the work of John Stuart Mill. So whether you're going to write about John Stuart Mill or not, so it doesn't matter whether you're going to choose to write about John Stuart Mill or not. This is an important idea from Mill. Mill is going to say that unless you have examined the best argument on the other side of the issue, right, you cannot say that you have an intelligent opinion. So in order for you to be able to say that you have an intelligent opinion, you need to first examine the best criticisms of your opinion. So, and in this sense, there's this dialogical pluralism which is built into the structure of our course. And again, since I am a very opinionated person, I want to stress this at the outset of the course, that I highly encourage you to, if you want, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I encourage and invite disagreement, and I encourage you to develop, to try to develop your own points of view. Okay. So, there's a million other things to talk about, but I guess this has been going on for quite a while, and I should probably be wrapping this up. So I hope you have found this somewhat informative, somewhat stimulating, and maybe gets the gears in your head moving in a particular direction. Once again, thank you very much for your company. Thank you for joining me today. And once again, happy holidays. I hope everybody's staying safe, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing this intellectual journey together with all of you colleagues. Okay, and I guess we'll pause here.